possibly could from him. So this is the lesson today, and it's life lessons through pictures. So some of you have seen me do this before. These are John Maxwell's from this year, and they were a little different this year, and they were powerful at the same time. And I'm going to be looking back and forth between my iPad and the screen, so want to make sure that I get you guys the good notes. You may want to just jot down the lesson and then any notes. So here's the first picture. So here's what, for those of you that haven't seen this before, this is what John does. So he flashes up on the TV, he pulls pictures from his iPhone, and every year he goes through and he favorites his favorite pictures that have taught him the biggest lesson. And then he shares those pictures with us, and then he shares the lesson from the picture. And so this first picture is a picture of John, and then that's his wife Margaret in the middle, and that's John's sister on the right, and then this is John's dad. Well, I'm pointing like you guys can see my screen. That's John's dad at the bottom, and I believe this is right before he passed earlier this year. So this was at his 98th birthday party, and it was funny when we were in the class. John said, "Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on. We were at this restaurant. You know, it's like the cheap Italian restaurant," and the whole room said Olive Garden. And John said, "See, that's what they're known for. That's their brand," because we'd been talking about branding earlier that day too. And so he showed up he flashed up this picture, and then also on the right you can see a picture of Simon Sinek's Infinite Game book, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. And the lesson that John told us for these is there is no finish line. And that was the lesson from these two pictures. And so he said that there are two types of people in this world, and both are correct. Not one is right and not one is wrong, but there are finish line people and there are no finish line people. And so he said you have to really think about that, because he said with him, nothing starts and stops because the game is much bigger. And he said his job is not to finish well. It's that when he is finished, that everybody else around him has improved and is better. And so he said, in this lesson, the biggest lesson is you have to focus on others, not on yourself. And he was sharing, that's what his dad did, obviously, for the 98 years that he lived. And he said that you exit this life by making everybody else better around you. And if you live your life well, when you leave, everybody else gets better. And John's just the best at that. For those of you that listen to him or have read his books, you just know that one of his greatest gifts, I believe, is that he makes everybody else's life better around him. And so I loved this lesson, which was there is no finish line. And if you haven't read The Infinite Game, it's a really great one too. And I would highly suggest that. The next picture is this one. And this was a really interesting story. And have any of you been to Waco, Texas, where Chip and Joe's Magnolia Farm is? So this is where Magnolia store, this is where this picture was taken. And many of you may have heard of the man Paul Myers. Some of you may have never have heard of Paul Myers. But Paul Myers was a very inspirational, motivational instructor, teacher, mentor. And John has a really big story around him. Let me tell you the lesson first. The lesson on this picture is whenever you can, tell someone the rest of the story. And so I'll tell you the story that John shared. So this picture is actually Paul Myers' daughter and her husband. And John had a really interesting story. So when John was in 1976, when John was kind of starting his career and he was a pastor, he bought Paul Myers' kit for $799, which at the time was 1 month's salary for John. And he said they sacrificed to do it. He said he had to talk Margaret into it for like weeks. And that John kept saying, I know this kit's going to change my life. I know that I'm just feeling really led. I'm feeling really called to buy this kit. And so he did. And he said they didn't go out to eat and they made all these sacrifices. And he took his whole 1 month salary and paid the $799 and bought the Paul Myers kit. And here's an even crazier story. Still to this day, we got to tour John's home office and his home in Palm Beach, Florida. And he has the kit to the right of his desk on the floor. And he said he looks at it every single day. And I thought it was great. Linda McKissick actually asked him to take a picture with the kit with her and John. And so she said she wanted to remember that because she also remembered the kit too. So funny story. John said that one of the things he wanted to do with his family was his wife and his daughter, they really wanted to go to Magnolia in Waco. So he packed him up one weekend and flew him to Magnolia. And he said that while they were shopping around, he knew that Janet, Paul's daughter, and her husband Randy lived in Waco. And so he said he just kind of happened to ask around and said, do you guys know anything about her? Does she live close to here? I know she owns this cute little store. Well, it was right down the street from Magnolia. And so John said, while Margaret and the girls shopped, he said he moseyed down to this store just to kind of go in and see if he could, what her store was like. And lo and behold, she was there. And so he said that he sat down and he said he got tears in his eyes when he saw her. And he said, I went up to her and I said, I know I've never met you before. My name's John Maxwell. And I just want to tell you that your dad changed my life. And if you have just about 10 minutes, I'd love to sit down with you just privately. And I want to share some stories with you. And so he said that she took him back and they went back in her office. And he said that he shared the stories with her of the kit and how he sacrificed that whole month to buy her dad's kit. And so here's some of the things I wrote down from this. He said the $799 investment kit has returned millions of dollars to John in his life. And so he was able to share that with her. He said, you can't ask someone to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And so you have to invest in yourself always. You can never not invest in yourself. He said, get good and you will brand yourself and you won't need branding. And we were kind of going back to the Olive Garden story about that, because when you're really, really good, you don't need to have a brand. You don't need to build a brand. Your goodness is your brand and what you believe in. He said, don't be a shortcut person or a quick fix, just get good. And I loved when he said that, because when you get good at something, you don't need to have a quick fix plan. So what he did was he sat down with her and he shared some of those lessons. And he said that after 5 minutes of her time, or 15 minutes of her time, and he told her what her dad did for him, he said at the end, he told her, as long as I live, your father will live because he lives through me. And he said she just, was crying, and it was just an emotional time. But he said that what he did was he filled in the pages of the story of her dad for her. And he just said that it was just such a great blessing for her, but also for him. And so the question that he asked us that I want to ask you guys around this lesson is, who has done something for you that you need to fill the rest of the pages for, that you may need to give the rest of the story to? Because that will not only be a blessing to you, but it'll be a huge blessing to them. This was one of my favorite stories that he shared. I just think that's such a great story. And what are the odds? She doesn't work in that store every day. She just happened to be there that day with her husband, which I thought was awesome. So loved that one. Here is the next picture, two pictures. And so John has a administrative director of operations assistant named Linda, and she's worked with John. I don't know. Linda McKissick and I were actually trying to figure that out. I think it's been like over 30 years that she's worked for John. And she has this dog, and that's her dog. And her dog's name is Remy. And John said she just loves her dog, probably as much, like I am with Frankie. She just loves her dog. And so John's wife, Margaret, is an artist. She paints. She doesn't sell her paintings or anything like that. She just paints as a hobby. And so Margaret painted that painting that you see next to Remy for Linda. And it took her 6 months to paint that picture for Linda, because she's has never really done animals before. She'd just done more like scenery type pictures. And so, I'm sorry, here it was, 33 years. I knew I had it in my notes somewhere. John said she's been running his life and all the details for 33 years, Linda has. And so the lesson around this is the best gifts include a part of yourself. And I love to give gifts. I know many of you love to give gifts too. And I loved this lesson because it took her, that was probably one of the most special gifts that Linda has ever received. And it had a piece of John's wife in it because it took her 6 months to paint it, So John said, not only are they wrapped nicely, but they include a labor of love when you're giving a gift to somebody. Now, you may not be an artist and be able to paint, but there are other things that you can do. And this second picture shows that. John is a masterful gift giver. I've never met somebody more intentional with gift giving. And he was speaking and doing some stuff with Rick Hendricks, and he's a huge collector of guitars. All of those guitars are guitars that Rick Hendricks has collected. And so John actually knew Bob Taylor. And long story short, he was thinking of something really special to give Rick as a gift. And so he reached out to Bob Taylor and said, I really have a big favor. I need you to make a one-of-a-kind guitar that you've never made before, because I want to give that to Rick. And so he did. And he told this long story about how Rick said it was one of the most, out of all the guitars and all the celebrities and all the artists that have signed him, that was one of his favorite gifts he's ever received. But he said, just really remember that when you're being intentional with being a gift giver, or you're making someone's day, that the best gifts have a piece of you included in them. And so I thought that one was really great too. And good job, Margaret. Man, that painting looks a lot like Remy. This is a second part of that. Okay, this is the second part of lesson number 3. Which is the best gifts will include a part of your labor. This is a piece of a note card. So John writes all of his lessons and all of his notes, and he has for all of the years that he's been doing this on these little tiny note cards. And you can see it has his, it's like his little stationary note cards with his name on the right-hand side. Can you guys see that? Yeah. And so this was one of his lessons that he taught like years ago. And he keeps all of these in these little boxes in his office. And so he was sharing with us that he hosted a round table earlier this year with about 25 young pastors, up and coming pastors. And John hosted a round table, and they all came over, and he was sharing lessons with them. And he said he really wanted to give them each a gift. And he said, but he wanted it to be something that was special, that they would remember forever. Then he said, I didn't want to buy him something, but he just wanted to give him something special. So he said throughout the whole time, he still didn't know what he was going to give him. And then he said in the middle of the dinner, it hit him. And he said he excused himself, and he got up and he went to his office, and he pulled out, I'm sorry, there wasn't 25, there was 18 of the young pastors. He pulled out 18 of his lesson cards from years ago. And he said he came out and he presented each of them with one of these cards with his lesson, with his handwriting. And on the back, they were all dated from different years. And he said that he told them that he was giving them a piece of himself, because he wanted them to always remember him. And he wanted them to have something that was valuable. Mind you, John is selling all of these because he shared with us that one day when he's no longer with us anymore, all of these things will be auctioned off for his charity. And I mean, they'll go for, who knows how much. And so he said, I want you guys to have this now. I want you to have a piece of it. And he said, remember, every time you give a piece of you to someone, they're going to carry it with them forever. And he said that one of the things that he said for people of faith that are on today, he said that a lot of times people will give him things and they'll say selfishly, I know that you'll love this, but every time you use it or every time you have it, I want you to just think of me and pray for me. And so he wears these Ferragamo shoes that are, really expensive, nice shoes. And he said that Pastor Chris Hodges actually gave him those shoes, and he had them on that day that he was telling the story. And so he took his shoes off and he held them up in the room. And he said, I love these shoes. They're some of my favorite shoes because they came from one of my best friends, Pastor Chris Hodges. And he said, but Chris is sitting here and he would tell you that when he gave these to me, he said, John, I know these are expensive shoes and I love them and I want you to have them. But every morning when you get out of bed and you sit down and you put these shoes on, I just want you to pray for me. And John said, so I do every day, when I put these shoes on, I pray for PC, and they're just such a great gift. So that was that one. Okay, here's lesson number 4. Let's see, how much time do I have? Okay, hopefully we'll get through these. Lesson number 4 is find a way to underline your lessons visually. And so this one I thought was unique, and I'd never heard this before. This is a picture of John's son. His name is Joel. And John would, I think he doesn't care to share that Joel was a bit of a problem child, and he was his tough one. And John says, we didn't know how Joel was going to turn out, is what he said that day. He just said he was his tough one. And so this picture is, they took a trip to New York City and they saw these monkeys, and you guys have, seen the monkeys see and hear and do and all that. And so he said that this was a funny story because when they walked past it, Joel said, oh my gosh, you got to take my picture with these monkeys. And so he said that every time when Joel was growing up and he would have a peculiar time where maybe he was getting in trouble or he wasn't listening correctly, that John and Margaret would always remind him of the story of the monkeys. Monkeys see, hear, monkeys say, no evil. What's the saying? I'm blanking on it right now. But he said that as a kid, they got him sets of these monkeys. Like they would order them, they would find them. And so he has all these sets because they wanted him to know the see no evil, hear no evil, do no evil. That's it. That's what it is. And so he said that they wanted to ingrain that in Joel's brain the whole entire time he was growing up. And I think they said today he has over 80 little sets of unique, different of the monkeys from all around the world. Every time they've seen one, they've bought it. And so he said that, no, I wrote it down. He has 118 monkey sets from around the world. And that was his visual reminder to underline your teachings with visual reminders, because he said as much of a difficult kid as Joel was today, obviously he's great. We met him at John's house and he was a super nice kid. But he said that they had to underline the lesson visually. And so he said, for those of you that are parents, or even those of you that, teach or instruct, the best way you can do something is to constantly remind with a visual, because that helps them get set in their mind. And so I just thought that was neat. And, Joel kind of laughed. But obviously it's something that he's remembered if they're walking down the streets of New York and he's like, whoa, Dad, take my picture with these monkeys. So John said that was one of his favorite lessons because he knew that Joel really listened. Okay, this was another one. Let me see. I have these on multiple pages, so let me flip. The lesson around this one is a family of leaders can leave a great legacy. So you don't have to have a family that left a legacy, or you don't have to have a blood family that you're trying to leave a legacy, but a family of different leaders can leave a great legacy. And this is in London with the John Maxwell team coaches, and all of these people are from 12 different countries. And he said that a legacy is the people, not the organization. And that's one of the biggest things that we need to remember, especially those of us as leaders, that a legacy is the people, it's not the organization. And he said that you have to get legs for your legacy, and that getting legs is all about the people that you bring into your world, and being able to mentor them and to help them be better people and to continue to grow them. And so he said that the reason he loves this picture so much, and the biggest reason that he shared it, was because all of these people are the legs to John's legacy in other countries. And so he shared with us, like, there were from Romania and Ireland and Africa and China. There are all sorts of different countries represented. But I thought that was just a really great one for maybe those of you that have been thinking about legacy lately. This was another good one. This is a simple one. So John lost 44 pounds during the pandemic. And when we saw him in person, I mean, as soon as I walked in, and he and I and Adam actually kind of walked into the beginning cocktail hour reception at the same time. And I was like, oh my gosh, John, I totally could tell how much weight he'd lost. And so this was one of the pictures that he shared. And this is just an easy one. And this was one of he's using that health app on the iPhone. And he said that this was a picture where he's walking a minimum of about 10 miles a day. And he said that for him, time is a big thing. And so he's never made health a priority, because he says he's just always used travel as an excuse. And so he said he would always come back and, say, I just travel too much. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to eat right and all those things. And so he said, the lesson on this one is the best excuse is the worst excuse. And many of you have probably heard that before. And so with the pandemic, obviously his travel got put to a halt for several months. And so he said, I'm going to take the time to actually make this a habit of my life. And so he walks every single day. He's not like lifting weights. And he says, he's still pretty much eating the same as what he does, but he walks every day a minimum of 10 miles. And he shared with us a couple other lessons inside of this one. And so he said that he said, I can't imagine just walking and not doing anything. And he said, I always can't get people to walk with me. And so he's been listening to podcasts. A lot of us have been listening to podcasts for a long time. Well, John's a big book reader. And so instead he switched to podcast. And so he said that he just takes his time and he walks. And he said, if it takes me hours to walk the 10 miles, I do it. And if it takes me a shorter time that day, then it's a shorter time. But he's listening to podcasts or sermons or YouTube, whatever, the whole entire time. And he's making notes in his notes on his phone. And so he said now he has all these notes from all these different podcasts and all these different lessons on his phone because of walking. And now he said it's just a habit, and he said he feels weird when he doesn't do it. But I thought that was just a really good reminder. The best excuse is the worst excuse. This was another really good one that I loved. This is a picture of John with two Amish gentlemen, Jake on the left and David on the right. And the lesson in this one is the desire to know people different than you makes a difference in you. The desire to know people different than you makes a difference in you. And a lot of times, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I'm sure you probably have at some point. We kind of get stuck with just the same people around us that are like us all the time, or we hang out with the same people that are just like us. And so John met these gentlemen and invited them to a 2-hour dinner. But he said that his lesson around this too was it's not healthy to be around people like you all the time, because you need to learn from other people and you need to be around other people. And he said, don't judge them, just love them. Because I loved this quote that he said, because when the walls come down, stuff comes down. And I thought that was so good, because you get to learn about other people and you get to hear what makes them tick. And so it was funny because John said, I knew when we were at dinner that I wanted to take a picture with them, but Amish people don't take pictures apparently. And so he said, I was struggling the whole time because I knew I wanted to take a picture, because John obviously is very big in pictures. He likes to have the memories. And so he said, I was just thinking the whole time, man, should I ask him? Should I not ask him? Should I ask him? Should I not ask him? And so he said at the end of the 2-hour dinner, they came up and said, John, we'd really be honored if you'd take a picture with us. And he said, sure, I've been sitting here hoping for 2 hours, hoping that you would ask that. He said, I was trying to figure out a way to ask you guys. So remember the lesson, the desire to know people different than you makes a difference in you. And I thought that was just such a great one. Here is another picture. And this picture, let me find my notes on this one because I really loved this one too. The lesson on this one, well, where is my picture on this one? Uh-oh, shoot. I know I have it because I just copied it. Hold on. This was a good one too. I think this one was about the gift. Oh, here it is. Yep. Okay. This one was, the lesson is do for others what they cannot do for themselves. And so this is John's book that he came out with maybe the beginning of this year, because he gave it to us last November before it was out. So I'm thinking maybe it came out earlier this year, The Leader's Greatest Return. And the lesson around this one, do for others what they cannot do for themselves, is he dedicated, and you can kind of see my chicken scratch notes on here, but he dedicated this book to his best friends, and he gave it to them as a gift. And so he dedicated the book to them, but then he signed it and he gave this to them as a surprise. And actually, he actually told another story, because obviously they weren't going to write a book and they weren't going to dedicate a book. So he wanted them to have that. And he didn't even share with us their names. I don't remember who it was, but he did share with us another really great story. His son-in-law, Steve, John says, gave him one of the most unforgettable gifts that he has ever received in his life. And for purposes, you'll understand why he didn't share a picture of this, but after I tell you, he said that, he's been with Steve's been in his life, I think, since his daughter and he started dating when they were like teenagers. And Steve works for John. He's at all of the events. And so he was in the room when John told this story. And he said that John was there when his daughter and Steve's second child was born. So John's second grandchild was born. And he said he was actually there in the room. And he said that Steve came over to him and said, John, do you want to cut the umbilical cord? And John said, no, like, you're the dad, you're supposed to cut the cord. And Steve said, honestly, I did it for the first child, whatever the first child's name was. And he said, and I just know that, you're obviously not having any more kids. And I know how special the grandkids are to you. And I just want you to remember her and remember this moment forever. And I can't give you a lot of gifts that you don't already have, but but this is a gift I can give you. And so John said that he cut the cord. And he said that it was one of the best gifts he's ever received in his entire life. And he said that he knew at that moment, he said he looked at Steve and said, I knew that she made the right decision marrying you, talking about his daughter. But he said it was just one of the best gifts that he's ever received. So do for others what they cannot do for themselves is such a great lesson. We'll have to end on this one. And then I had a couple more that I'll share with you guys next week. But I love this one too. So this was one of my biggest takeaways from the entire event. So it's actually kind of good that we're ending on this one today. This is a picture of John Maxwell at the top with Jack Nichols. And then at the bottom was a dinner with Jack Nichols. You can see kind of his profile right there on the right. And then John and Margaret. And then John got to bring some of his closest people. There's Pastor Chris Hodges, you can see with the glasses, for those of you that follow and know him. And then several other of John's people. So this was a golf day with Jack and some people from John's group. And it was $100,000 to attend the day to play golf with Jack and to go to the dinner, $100,000 per person. And so the lesson on this one is don't allow relationships to get one-sided. Don't allow relationships to get one-sided. And so here was the lesson. So John said that they raised a lot of money for John's charity that day, obviously, because all of those people sitting there paid $100,000 to be there that day. And I'm sure there were other people that we can't even see around the table. And so John said a couple of lessons around don't allowing relationships to get one-sided. He was so gracious that Jack did this, for him, because Jack just said, I'll do it for you, John, as a friend, as a favor, and you don't have to give me anything. And so Jack has a charity himself it's a children's charity, and I don't remember the name of it. I apologize. So at the end of the dinner, John presented Jack with a check for $250,000 to his charity. So of the money that was raised for John's charity that day, John took $250,000 out of that and gave it back to Jack and wrote a check to his charity in Jack's name. And Jack pulled John aside and said, this is the first time that anybody has ever given my charity a check when I've done something for them like this. And he said, John just said, honestly, I'm so blessed that you did this for us today. And I just wanted to give you a gift because I don't ever want our relationship to get one-sided. I don't ever want you to feel like that you are giving more to the relationship than what I am. And he said that Jack looked at him and said, John, could we do this again? And again, John said, those are the magic words that you wait to hear when you do something like this with somebody, is that they'll ask for you to do it again. And so just a couple more quick things. He said, and so all the people that came that day that participated, obviously they loved being with John, they loved being with Jack, but John got them all a special master's flag and had Jack sign every flag for every person that was there and gave them all that gift of the flag, of the signed flag in a frame. And so that was his way of thanking them, because he said that was something that, they couldn't do for themselves. None of them were going to be able to get Jack to sign a master's flag. And he didn't want the relationships to be one-sided. He wanted them to know that he was thinking of them because they were there with him that day. And so a couple last things to end on. John said, Jack Welch, who's one of my favorite leaders to listen to, said, you have to get out of the pile in life if you want to be seen. You got to get out of the pile. And how do you set yourself apart and be unforgettable? You've got to figure out ways to get out of the pile. And John said one of the best ways to do that is don't allow relationships to get one-sided. So to be unforgettable and to have the other person ask if they could be with you is one of the greatest ways that you can get out of the pile. Yeah. And so there were some more on that. So anyway, those were the ones that we'll have to stop at because it's 9:30, but thank you guys for, I see Dick Dillingham. Oh my gosh. Hi, good morning. I miss you. Thank you guys so much for being on. I hope that this blessed you as much as it blessed me, and I'll see you next Wednesday.
Great job.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thank you so much, Dana. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Milton. See you.